All right, so are you ready to like dive in some really out there stuff today?
Always.
Okay, good. Because we are going to be taking a look at a YouTube video,
Okay.
and the title is like full-on conspiracy theory. It's called,
Hit me.
in all caps, the UCC Connection: How to Free Yourself from Legal Tyranny.
Ooh.
Dramatic music, the
Yeah.
whole nine yards. The guy who made it,
Okay.
his name is Howard Freeman,
Right.
and he makes some pretty wild claims about how we can like outsmart the entire legal system
Okay.
using this thing called the Uniform Commercial Code.
All right. The UCC.
The UCC, yeah?
Yeah.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah, the UCC is a real thing. It's a set of laws that's used every day for business transactions.
So like contracts and stuff.
Exactly. Like when businesses buy and sell goods or enter into agreements with each other, the UCC makes sure those transactions are handled fairly and consistently.
Gotcha. So it's like the rule book for the business world.
Exactly.
Okay, but this
Yeah.
guy Freeman, he's not exactly teaching a business law class, is she?
No, not quite. He's taking this concept of the UCC and stretching it
Okay.
way beyond its intended purpose.
So like how, so...
Well, his main argument is that America is secretly bankrupt and operating under what he calls colorable law.
Colorable law. What does that even mean?
He basically means it's all a facade. It looks like real law, but it has no real substance.
So it's like we're living in a legal Potemkin village?
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay, so I'm following so far. We've got a bankrupt America, fake laws, and the UCC somehow tied into all of this.
Yeah.
But like how does he connect those dots?
Well, he claims it all goes back to a Supreme Court case from 1938, Erie Railroad versus Tompkins.
Yeah.
He says this case shifted the legal landscape from public law based on the Constitution to something he calls public policy.
And what's wrong with public policy?
Well, he sees it as arbitrary rules made up by those in power, not based on any real legal foundation.
So he thinks the courts are just making things up as they go along.
That's his argument. And he claims this shift to public policy forced courts to operate under a secret admiralty jurisdiction.
Wait, admiralty jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Like we're all at sea now subject to maritime law.
That's the picture he paints.
Okay, hold on. I need to back up for a sec. This Erie Railroad case,
Yeah.
it really happened, right?
Oh, yeah, it's a real case. But it wasn't about what Freeman claims. It was about how federal courts apply state law. It didn't create some hidden maritime court system.
So he's kind of twisting history to fit his narrative.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so we've got this foundation of a bankrupt America, fake laws, and the UCC supposedly controlling everything. Where does he go from there?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. He claims that by using Federal Reserve notes just by spending money, we're unknowingly entering into contracts with the government.
Wait, so every time I buy a coffee, I'm signing a legal agreement?
According to Freeman, yes. He calls it compelled benefit. We get the benefit of using the currency, but in exchange, we supposedly agree to follow every single statute.
Every single one. So like parking tickets, taxes, the whole shebang.
The whole shebang.
Okay, that's a pretty big claim. But I'm guessing he doesn't just leave us stuck in this web of secret contracts, right?
You're right. He has a solution.
Hit me.
And it involves a phrase that becomes a bit of a mantra throughout the video. Without prejudice, UCC 1308.
Ooh, magic words. What's so special about this phrase?
Freeman claims by adding, without prejudice, UCC 1308 to any legal document, we can magically reserve our common law rights and nullify the contract.
Seriously? So it's like a legal get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah.
Just sprinkle this phrase around, the government can't touch you.
That's the impression he gives. He even provides specific examples of using it on driver's licenses, tax forms, even Social Security applications.
Wow, so he's giving people like a step-by-step guide to supposedly escape legal obligation.
Exactly.
But hold on, let's go back to this compelled benefit thing. Is there actually any legal basis for this concept?
Well, while the idea of a compelled benefit might sound convincing,
Okay.
it's not a recognized legal principle.
Okay.
The act of using currency doesn't inherently create a binding contract with the government.
Okay, so he's kind of making things up again.
You could say that.
All right, so we've got the bankrupt America theory, the colorable law idea, and this magic phrase, without prejudice, UCC 1308. This is a lot to digest.
It is, and we've only just scratched the surface of Freeman's theories.
Oh, boy. So where do we go from here?
Well, in the next part, we'll dig a little deeper into some of the legal and historical inaccuracies in Freeman's arguments, and we'll explore the potential dangers of relying on these kinds of strategies in real life.
Okay, sounds like we're just getting started with this deep dive.
We are.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more on the UCC Connection.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's dig into some of those historical and legal claims that Freeman makes,
Yeah, sounds good.
because there are like some pretty big gaps between his narrative and, reality.
Yeah, like that whole thing about America being secretly bankrupt and controlled by these shadowy creditors.
Right.
That was kind of hard to believe.
It is, and it's just not supported by any like credible evidence.
Okay.
Freeman keeps talking about this secret meeting in 1938,
Okay.
where supposedly all these judges and lawyers were told about America's bankruptcy. But he doesn't offer any proof that this meeting ever took place.
So it's more like a conspiracy theory than a historical fact?
Exactly. And this whole idea of America being owned by creditors is a common theme in a lot of these anti-government circles.
Right.
But it's based on a misunderstanding of how sovereign debt actually works.
Okay, so the national debt isn't like a mortgage on the whole country.
Not quite.
We're not going to get evicted from America.
No, no. While the national debt is definitely something to be concerned about,
Right.
it doesn't mean that, like, America is literally owned by, some cabal of foreign banks.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
What about that whole idea of the courts operating under this secret admiralty jurisdiction? That was kind of creepy.
Yeah, I can see why that would be unsettling.
Yeah.
But again, this is a case of Freeman taking a real legal concept and kind of twisting it to fit his narrative. Admiralty law, or maritime law, is really just about issues related to the sea.
Okay.
Shipping, navigation, things like that.
Right.
It has its own set of rules and procedure,
Sure.
but it doesn't apply to your average court case.
So why is he trying to connect admiralty law to, like, everyday legal proceedings?
Well, he keeps going back to that Erie Railroad case from 1938.
Right.
He claims it caused the shift from public law to public policy and moved the courts into this secret admiralty jurisdiction. But that's not what the Erie Railroad case was about at all.
So he's making a mountain out of a molehill, legally speaking.
Yeah, he's definitely stretching the truth
Okay.
to create a more dramatic narrative.
And that kind of ties into a bigger pattern we see with these types of theories,
Right.
like cherry-picking legal concepts and historical events to fit a pre-existing belief system.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go back to the UCC for a minute.
Okay.
Freeman seems to think it's some kind of legal cheat code
Right.
that can unlock freedom from the system. Can you give us like a more grounded explanation of what the UCC actually is and how it applies to everyday life?
Sure. The Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC, is basically a set of rules that govern business transactions in the U.S.
Okay.
All 50 states have adopted it.
Okay.
And it helps make things more consistent,
Right.
whether you're talking about contracts or sales or leases or secured transactions.
So it's like the rule book for doing business, making sure everyone's playing by the same rules.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It helps businesses operate smoothly across state lines without worrying about conflicting laws.
That makes sense. But Freeman claims the UCC applies to like all legal proceedings, not just business transactions.
Right.
I don't really follow that logic.
Well, he ties it back to his idea that America is secretly bankrupt
Right.
and using this colorable law.
Okay.
He claims this somehow means the UCC controls everything,
Okay.
even traffic violations and criminal cases.
But that's a huge leap.
It is.
Like the UCC is about contracts and commerce. I don't see how it applies to like getting a speeding ticket.
It doesn't. Freeman's misapplying the UCC
Okay.
and twisting it to fit his narrative. He's trying to convince people that everything we do,
Okay.
from paying taxes to getting a driver's license, is like signing a contract with the government,
Okay.
and that we can use the UCC to nullify those agreements.
So he's taking something that's designed to help businesses and turning it into a weapon against the government.
Precisely.
And of course, his solution involves that magic phrase again.
Yeah.
Without prejudice, UCC 1308.
Yep. He insists that adding this to any legal document will reserve our common law rights
Okay.
and break us free from these supposed secret contracts.
But if the UCC doesn't actually apply to these situations, how could adding that phrase possibly make any difference?
It can't. It's like trying to fix a broken engine by changing the car's paint color.
Right.
The problem isn't the lack of UCC language. It's that Freeman's entire premise is flawed.
And so it's all smoke and mirrors, designed to sound convincing but lacking any real substance.
Pretty much. And it's really important for listeners to understand this because these types of arguments can be very persuasive to people who are already skeptical of the government or feel like the system is rigged against them.
Absolutely. It's important to arm ourselves with knowledge so we can see through these kinds of distortions.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about Freeman's sheep among wolves strategy.
Okay.
He seems to believe that acting innocent and confused can help you outsmart the courts and the authorities. Is there any merit to this approach?
Well, While it's always a good idea to be polite and respectful
Sure.
when dealing with law enforcement or the courts,
Right.
feigning ignorance and trying to manipulate the system is unlikely to be a winning strategy.
So playing dumb isn't going to magically get you out of a speeding ticket.
Probably not.
Uh,
Judges and law enforcement officers see these kinds of tactics all the time.
yeah.
They're not likely to be fooled by someone pretending to be clueless about basic legal concepts.
Okay, so what's the harm in trying out Freeman's methods?
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you still have to pay the fine, right?
Well, the potential consequences could actually be much more serious than that.
Really?
Attempting to use these tactics could be seen as contempt of court
Oh, wow.
or obstruction of justice, which could lead to increased fines or penalties or even jail time.
So trying to be clever could actually backfire and land you in deeper trouble.
Absolutely. The legal system is a serious matter, and it's important to treat it with respect.
Okay.
Trying to play games without a real understanding of the law can have serious consequences.
All right, let's move on to what might be the most eyebrow-raising claim in this whole video.
Okay.
Freeman's assertion that we can use our birth certificates to discharge legal charges.
Right.
Can you help us unpack his logic on this one?
Sure. This is where Freeman's theories really enter the realm of fantasy.
Okay.
He's essentially claiming that our birth certificates are evidence that we're beneficiaries of a trust
Okay.
set up by the government, and that by surrendering them in court, we're taking control of this trust and nullifying any charges against us.
So he's saying our birth certificates are like legal get-out-of-jail-free cards.
That's putting it very simply, yes. He even lays out a step-by-step guide for this,
Oh, boy.
telling people to make a special appearance in court,
Okay.
refuse to answer questions, and then surrender their birth certificate before walking out.
Okay, this is starting to sound more like a scene from a movie than a legitimate legal strategy.
Right.
Does he really think this will work?
He claims it's worked in 100% of the cases he's seen. He even advises people to refuse to give their names if they're detained,
Wow.
to just keep repeating that they're the beneficiary and that the court has no jurisdiction over them.
This is getting wilder by the minute. Is there any legal basis for any of this?
Absolutely not. There is no legal precedent whatsoever for using your birth certificate to discharge legal obligations.
Okay.
It's a completely fabricated idea,
Right.
based on a misinterpretation of legal concepts and a fundamental misunderstanding of the court system.
So it's more of a performance art piece than an actual legal strategy.
That's a good way to put it. While it's entertaining to imagine walking into court and throwing your birth certificate at the judge,
Yeah.
it's not going to hold up in the real world.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever find yourself in legal trouble, maybe don't rely on the birth certificate defense.
Definitely not. It's crucial to remember that the legal system is not a game to be played with.
Right.
It has real consequences. Trying to manipulate it without a thorough understanding of the law can lead to serious problems.
Okay, so we've discussed some of the specific claims that Freeman makes.
Right.
What about the broader implications of his theories? Like, what are the potential dangers of believing and spreading this kind of misinformation?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is that it erodes trust in legitimate legal processes and institutions.
Mm-hmm.
When people believe that the system is rigged against them
Okay.
and that there are secret loopholes to exploit, it weakens their faith in the rule of law.
So it breeds cynicism and distrust.
Exactly. And that can make it harder to address real problems within the legal system.
Right.
If people are convinced that the courts are corrupt and that the laws are meaningless,
Yeah.
they're less likely to engage in constructive dialogue
Right.
or work towards meaningful reform.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What else should we be worried about?
Or another danger is that it can lead people to make bad decisions
Okay.
that could have serious consequences. If someone believes they can just get out of a speeding ticket by quoting UCC code
Right.
or avoid paying taxes by dishonoring an IRS notice, they might not seek proper legal advice or take the necessary steps to resolve their legal issues.
So they could end up in a worse situation than they started because they're relying on bad information.
Exactly. And in some cases, these theories could have devastating consequences.
Oh, wow.
Someone who believes they can just walk away from any legal charge by surrendering their birth certificate
Right.
might end up facing serious criminal charges and a lengthy prison sentence.
So while Freeman's theories might sound empowering on the surface, they could actually put people at greater risk.
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember that there are no quick fixes or magic solutions when it comes to the law.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate legal issues without a solid understanding of how things actually work can lead to serious, even life-altering consequences.
That's a really powerful point. So what's the main takeaway from this part of our deep dive?
Well, I think the key message is that while it's important to be aware of your rights
Yeah.
and to think critically about the legal system,
Yeah.
it's equally important to base your actions on a solid understanding of the law
Right.
and a healthy dose of skepticism. There are no magic words or secret loopholes that can free you from your legal obligations.
Right.
The best way to handle legal matters is with knowledge awareness and the guidance of qualified professionals when needed.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that the internet, while a valuable resource,
Yes.
is also a breeding ground for misinformation. We have to be really careful about where we get our information and how we evaluate it.
Absolutely. We need to be discerning consumers of information,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to something as important as the law.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in part 2.
Mm.
What can listeners expect in the final part of our deep dive?
Well, in the last part, we'll wrap things up by looking at some of the psychological reasons
Okay.
why these types of theories can be so appealing. We'll also discuss the importance of critical thinking and media literacy in an age where misinformation is so prevalent.
Well, we've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive going through Howard Freeman's UCC theories, and
Yeah.
it's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've
Yeah.
encountered, secret courts and magic words and
Wow.
even birth certificate defenses,
Yeah.
not to make anyone question what's real and what's not.
Exactly. And that brings us to a pretty crucial question, like, why are these kinds of theories so appealing to some people? What makes them resonate so strongly?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there are several psychological factors at play here.
One key aspect is this appeal of simplicity.
Okay.
Freeman takes these really intricate legal concepts
Right.
and presents them as these easy-to-understand solutions.
Right.
He offers these, clear-cut rules and procedures
Okay.
that promise to, unlock freedom from the system.
Yeah.
And it's very tempting,
Yeah.
especially for those who feel overwhelmed by the complexities of the legal world.
It's like he's offering a shortcut, a cheat code to navigate a system that often feels very confusing and intimidating.
Precisely. And that ties into another factor, I think.
Okay.
The desire for control.
Okay.
In Freeman's world, individuals are empowered to outsmart the authorities and manipulate the system to their advantage.
Right. It's like a legal life hack.
Exactly. It gives people a sense of agency
Right.
in situations where they might otherwise feel powerless.
So it's about feeling like you can take back control in a world that often feels really chaotic and unpredictable. Exactly. And let's not forget the allure of forbidden knowledge.
Right.
Freeman positions himself as this insider, someone who's uncovered these secret truths that the powers that be want to keep hidden.
It's like he's found the secret decoder ring to the legal system.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And this idea of having access to this hidden knowledge can be very seductive.
Yeah.
It makes people feel like they're in the know, like they're part of an exclusive group
Right.
that understands how the world really works.
Yeah, I can see how that would be especially appealing in our current climate, where, misinformation is so rampant and trust in institutions is declining.
Absolutely. Conspiracy theories and fringe beliefs often flourish in environments where people feel alienated or marginalized.
Okay.
They provide a sense of community and shared purpose,
Right.
even if that purpose is based on, a distorted view of reality.
So it's not just about the information itself.
Right.
It's also about, the emotional needs that it fulfills.
Right. Exactly. It's about feeling connected, informed, and empowered.
Okay.
And that's why it's so crucial to approach these theories with empathy and understanding,
Okay.
even if we ultimately disagree with their conclusions.
That's a really important point. But we also have to acknowledge the potential dangers of buying into these theories. What are some of the risks associated with embracing Freeman's UCC theories?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is that it can lead people to make poor decisions with serious legal consequences.
Right.
If someone believes they can simply walk away from legal charges by surrendering their birth certificate,
Right.
they might face even harsher penalties than if they had just followed standard legal procedures.
It's like trying to fix your own plumbing after watching a 5-minute YouTube tutorial.
Exactly.
It might seem like a good idea at the time, but the consequences could be disastrous.
The legal system is complex,
Yeah.
and it requires specialized knowledge and expertise.
Right.
Trying to navigate it without proper guidance can be incredibly risky.
So how can we protect ourselves from falling prey to misinformation and these potentially harmful legal theories?
Well, I think the key is to cultivate critical thinking skills.
Okay.
and to be aware of our own biases.
Right.
We need to question the information that we encounter, especially when it comes from sources that might have a hidden agenda.
So it's not just about what we read or watch, but about how we engage with information and how we evaluate its credibility.
Precisely. We need to become more active and discerning consumers of information rather than passive recipients.
That's a great point. It's about being curious, skeptical, and always seeking out multiple perspectives.
Exactly. We also need to be mindful of the emotional appeal of these theories.
Got it.
It's easy to get swept up in a narrative that promises simple solutions and a sense of control,
Right.
but it's important to remember that real-world problems rarely have easy answers.
So it's about recognizing those emotional triggers
Yeah.
and taking a step back to assess the information objectively.
Precisely. And ultimately, the best way to protect ourselves from misinformation is to cultivate a healthy skepticism,
Okay.
a thirst for knowledge, and a willingness to engage in thoughtful, respectful dialogue.
That's a really powerful message. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into Howard Freeman's UCC theories. We've explored the claims, we've dissected the logic, and we've examined the potential consequences.
Yeah, we've seen how these theories can be both appealing and dangerous, offering a sense of empowerment while simultaneously leading people astray.
So as we conclude, I think it's crucial to remember that knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we understand about the legal system and how it truly works, the better equipped we'll be to navigate its complexities and protect ourselves from those who would exploit our ignorance.
It's about empowering ourselves with accurate information, critical thinking skills, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of UCC theories, sovereign citizens, and the enduring appeal of legal loopholes. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay critical.